We'll discuss about the different types of topic basically. First, we'll discuss about the some of the part that remain untouched in the electrostatic part. That is continuity equations, image charges. After completion of these things, we'll start the magnetostatic. In the magnetostatic part, we'll discuss about the different types of basic like magnetic flux density. Then we'll discuss about the Biot-Savart law, Ampere's law, and the Maxwell's third and fourth equations.
Okay, sir. Sir, actually, one new student have joined.
Still, one new student have joined.
Yes,
Whether
sir.
he or she got the class link for today's class.
No, no, sir. I have personally sent her, but I will also send you her email address.
Okay, you will send me the email address. I will include
Okay, sir.
the name. Okay, now I am going to share my screen. Is the PPT visible from your end?
Yes, sir.
So first we are going to discuss about the continuity of current. To discuss about the continuity of current, suppose we are considering a volume, the volume of this particular area, a particular cube is V, and the charge that is stored in this particular volume is capital Q. Now, if we expand the volume, what will be the effect on the current as well as the charge? That will be stated by this continuity of current equation. So we are considering a volume that enclosed some charges of q amount of charges, and its volume of this particular area is, or this particular cube is V. We can consider that the volume charge density is rho V. Now if we expand this particular volume, or if we reduce the volume of this particular area, what will be the effect on the charge and what will be the effect on the corresponding current? If we expand from the basic concept, if we expand this volume, what will be the effect on the charge, or what will be the effect on the surface volume charge density? Volume charge density means amount of charge per unit volume. So if you expand this particular volume, what will be the effect on the volume charge density?
No effect, sir.
There will be no effect on the volume charge density. Rho V means Q by V. You are expanding this volume.
Oh, sorry, sir. Yes, it will
It
decrease.
will decrease. If volume charge density is decreased, on the other hand, if you think about the current means I equal to the rate of change of the charge. That is, we can say I equal to dq dt. So if we increase the volume or expand the volume, the charge will be spreaded. There will be flow of charge. As a result, there will be a decrease in the volume charge density. So we can say that the corresponding current I will be minus of dq dt. Why we are considering this negative sign, that I have already discussed. That is, we are considering this negative sign due to decrease in the charge with respect to time. If with respect to time we expand the volume, the charge density as well as the charge flow will decrease in the corresponding volume or cube. So I will be minus of dq dt. Now from the another point of view, if we consider the current in the closed surface, if we want to find out the current in a closed surface, and the current density is suppose J, then what will be the I? That particular equation is known to us. That is the surface integral of J dot ds. Okay, where J is the current density in corresponding closed surface. Now from this equation 1 and 2, if I can apply the Gauss divergence theorem, Gauss divergence theorem basically convert the surface integral into volume integral. So this J dot ds means it becomes divergence of J dv. Now as per the volume charge density, we know what is the relation between charge and volume charge density. Q equal to the volume integral of rho v dv. So now if we apply this 3 and 4 in equation number 1, then we can write down that I equal to basically J dot ds. J dot ds means divergence of J dv. So this is divergence of J dv. That is equal to minus of dq dt minus of d dt of q, means from equation 4 we are getting q equal to rho v dv. So q equal to rho v dv. If we simplify this, we will get that is divergence of J dv equal to minus of d of rho v dt over the volume integral dv. So on the both side of this equation, we are considering the volume integral, so we can neglect that, cancel this volume integral, and finally we will get that divergence of J equal to minus of d rho v dt. This particular equation is providing us the information about the current density, the relation between the current density and the volume charge density. And that particular point I have mentioned at the beginning of this discussion, that if we expand this particular volume, the volume charge density rho v will decrease with respect to time. That is particularly shown in this particular equation, that is divergence of J equal to minus of d rho v dt. This particular equation is known as continuity equations, and it is very helpful in the to solve different types of electromagnetics problems, or it is very helpful in the electromagnetics. Okay.
স্যার
So yes.
স্যার এটা ইকুয়েশনটা মানে কিসের কন্টিনিউটি বোঝাচ্ছে ওটা আর কি? চার্জের
Current. Continuity of current. That's why we have started with the current equation. I equal to minus dq dt. I equal to J dot ds. Now Q is replaced by Q, means that is integration of rho v dv, and J is, from this equation we are applying the divergence theorem. From the divergence theorem we are getting that J dot ds means divergence of J dv. So divergence of J dv equal to this one, and finally we are getting that divergence of J means on the left hand side of this equation, this is current density. So it is representing the relation between the current density and the volume charge density.
ওকে স্যার
That's why it is known as the continuity of current, or continuity equation. Simply it is also known as continuity equation. Next we'll discuss about the another two equations which are very useful or widely used in the electromagnetics, that is Poisson's equations and Laplace equations. Now from the basic discussion, we know that what is the relation between the electric field and potential. that is electric field equal to minus of del V. The relation between the electric field and the potential, that is E equal to minus of del V, that is represented in equation 1. Now we know we are familiar with the Gauss's law. Now as per the Gauss's law of electrostatic, divergence of E equal to rho V by epsilon naught, where rho V is the volume charge density, epsilon naught is the dielectric constant of the free space. Okay. Now in this equation, if we apply 2 in equation number 1, that is divergence of E equal to minus of del V as per equation 1, so it becomes rho V by epsilon naught. The left hand, this negative sign is transferred to the right hand side, so it becomes divergence of del V. Divergence of del V means that is basically the del square V, or it's also known as grad square V, equal to minus of rho V by epsilon naught. So this particular term del square, it is also known as Laplacian operator. Del square is known as Laplacian operator, and this equation is known as Poisson's equations. Now if we consider a surface, if we consider an enclosed surface where the volume charge density is 0, or there is no charge is in this particular closed surface, that means we are considering that the volume charge density rho V equal to 0. Then in the Poisson's equations, if we put rho V equal to 0, the Poisson's equations becomes del square V equal to 0, or that is the grad square V equal to 0. Then this particular equation, that is equation B, it is known as the Laplace equations. Now these two equations are very useful in the electromagnetics. For example, if you consider this particular Laplace equations, by applying Laplace equations directly from this Laplace equation, the first parameter that you can find out, that is V. Once you determine the potential by using these Laplace equations, then we know the relation between the electric field and potential. Electric field and potential by terms of equation number 1. So once we find out V using the Laplace equation, then we can easily find out the electric field. Apart from that, you can also find out the capacitance. Capacitance equal to Q by V. So by using Laplace equations, you can find out the potential, electric field, as well as the capacitance. That's why these two equations are very useful or applicable in the electromagnetics. Now we'll discuss about the image theory of charges. This theory basically states that if any particular charge placed above a infinite ground plane which is perfectly conducting, then the corresponding ground plane can be replaced by a charge with its image and with opposite polarity. The statement is clear. The statement is that if you place any charge above an infinite ground plane which is perfectly conducting, that means you have placed a charge above an infinite ground plane which is perfectly conducting. Now you can replace that particular ground plane by an image of the charge. By image of the charge means its magnitude will be same, but its polarity will be opposite. That statement will be more clear if we consider the practical cases. Suppose we have placed a particular positive charge plus Q above d distance from this infinite ground plane. This is the infinite ground plane we have placed a positive q charge at a distance of d from this infinite ground plane. Then what will be the image of this charge? Or as per the image theory, you can now omit this ground plane or replace this ground plane by the image of this charge. Say from this particular figure, now we are moving to the second figure where this plus q charge is above the ground plane. Now the ground plane is replaced or removed. In place of ground plane, we are drawing some a dotted line. So image of this charge, if you place a mirror at this point, the image of this charge will be this one. The distance of this charge, image charge, will be also d from this reference line. That means to replace the infinite ground plane by an image charge, we have to consider the image of the corresponding charge with reference to the corresponding ground, considering the ground plane as the reference line. Once we are considering the ground plane as the reference line, we have to put a mirror. After putting a mirror, you can easily find out that what will be the position of the image of the corresponding this charge, actual charge. So that will be the image of the corresponding charge. So as per the image theory, once we consider the image of the corresponding charge, then we can replace or remove this ground plane. Now, of course, we are considering another example. Suppose this is the infinite ground plane which is perfectly conducting. Now instead of a point charge, previously we have considered a point charge, now we are considering a line charge with line charge density of rho L. At this particular end, it is at the distance of d1. At this particular distance, it is at this particular end, it is at the distance of d2. So what will be the image of this particular line charge? Same way, first we replace the ground plane by a reference line. Now at this reference line, if we put a mirror, then that will be this particular line will be the image of the previous or this particular line charge. That particular end of the line charge will be at distance of d1 from the reference line. This particular end of the line charge will be at the distance of d2 from the reference line. And what will be the line charge density? Its polarity will be opposite, that is minus of rho L. So in that way, you can replace the ground plane by applying the image theory. The image charge polarity will be opposite of the actual charge, and it will be at the same distance from the reference line. So these are the two important features about the image theory of the charges. The image charges that must be inside the conducting region, that is the first point. And second point is that image charge must be located in such a way that perfect conducting plane, that is the infinite ground plane, its potential will be V equal to 0. Potential V will be 0 on the surface. That means if we consider these examples, on the reference line, what will be the potential? On the reference line, the potential will be 0. In that case, on this potential line or on this reference line, V will be 0. So these are the two important points regarding the image theory of the charges. In the next stage, we will discuss about what will be the total number of images if we consider more number of ground plane. So if we consider this type of example where we have considered two infinite ground plane that are making an angle of phi, and we have considered a point charge that is located in between these two perfect ground plane. then the total number of image charge that will be equal to 360 degree divided by 5 minus 1. Number of image charges in case of inclined or more than one infinite ground plane with the angle of 5 between the ground planes, then it will be n equal to 360 by 5 minus 1. It will be clear with the next example. So for example, we are considering two perfect ground plane. One is along x-axis, another is along y-axis. So that means the angle between these two ground plane is 90 degree. And we are considering a charge q that is located at same distance from x and y-axis. Then what will be the total number of image as per this relation? It will be 360 by 90. That is 90 is the value of phi. 360 by 90 minus 1, that is 3. So there will be total 3 image charges and 1 actual charges. Let's try to draw it. This is your actual charge q. There are two ground planes. Now the ground planes are removed. In place of ground plane, we will consider the reference line. So if we draw the image of the corresponding charge one by one, this is your actual image q. Now first you place the mirror along this positive x-axis. So what will be the corresponding image? Obviously, that will be the corresponding image. What will be its value? That is of minus q. Minus q. In the next step, we have to consider the reference line along this positive y-axis, and we have to put a mirror. So if you place a mirror along this positive y-axis, then this particular q, it will be the minus q. So this is the image 1, this is the image 2. Now, as per this relation, there will be 3 images. So you can put the mirror along this line or along this line. Then if you put the mirror at along this line, then that will be the another image plus q. It is minus q, so it will be plus q. In another way, if you put the mirror along this line, it is minus q, so it will be plus q. So these are the 3 images. 1, 2, 3. So by applying the image charges, we can easily remove the infinite ground plane. But point is that once we removing the finite ground plane, we have to replace it by the corresponding image charges. And if we consider more than one ground plane and the ground planes are making some angle of phi, then the total number of image charge will be n equal to 360 by 5 minus 1. And this is the practical example how we can calculate or how we can find out the images for this type of placement of the ground plane. Is there any doubt?
No, sir.
Okay. Next, we are moving to the magnetostatics. Actually, till now that we have discussed, that is related with the electric field only. Now we have to consider the effect of magnetic field also. So at the starting of magnetostatistics, we have to familiar with the different usual terms that are used in the magnetostatics. You are already familiar with it. I will just go through the basic definitions of those parameters. Then we will enter into the main part that are concerned as per our syllabus. If we consider a magnetic bar with this is the north pole, this is the south pole, so we can draw the magnetic lines of force in that way that is known to you. So first if we try to define the magnetic flux means that is the number of magnetic lines that is passing through a closed surface. How we can define the magnetic flux? That is the number of magnetic lines of force passing through a closed surface. And it is denoted by, in general, it is denoted by phi. If you consider the CGS unit of magnetic flux, that is Maxwell, and the SI unit of the magnetic flux is Weber. So magnetic flux means basically the number of magnetic lines of force passing through a closed surface. In this particular figure, if we consider a closed surface like this, then we have to count the total number of magnetic lines of force that is passing through this closed surface. That will be the count of magnetic flux. So all the definitions are given. It is defined as the lines of force produced in the medium surrounding the electric currents or magnets. In this particular figure, we have considered the magnets, and you know that if we consider a current carrying conductor and it is carrying some current I, it will produce the magnetic field. That will be the part of discussion in the Biot-Savart law. I will discuss it in later. So basically, we can define that the lines of force produced in a medium that is surrounding by the electric currents or magnets. And it is also defined as the surface integral of the magnetic flux density. Though we still not discuss about the magnetic flux density B, but as per the definition, it can be also defined as phi equal to surface integral of B dot ds, where B is the magnetic flux density. Now with this discussion about the magnetic flux, now we will discuss about the magnetic flux density. Now, as you know, the definition of magnetic field, if we consider a space around a particular magnet means that is, you can say, conductor that is carrying the current. When we are considering some space around the magnet, and in this particular space, if we experience some magnetic effect, then it is called the magnetic field. That means you are considering some magnets or some current carrying conductor that produce the magnetic field basically. Now if we consider some space around this magnet or around this current carrying conductor, and in this space we will experience the magnetic effect, different types of magnetic effect, then it is called the magnetic field. So we basically experience the magnetic effect around a magnetic medium due to the magnetic field. So this magnetic flux density It is defined as the magnetic flux phi per unit area. That is the amount of magnetic flux per unit area. That is B equal to d phi by ds. Now, when we are discussing about the magnetic flux density, that is the magnetic flux per unit area, then obviously we have to consider the direction of this magnetic flux density. What will be the direction of this magnetic flux density? That will be the normal to the plane of the corresponding closed surface. That is, if we consider this is the closed surface, these are the magnetic field lines passing through this, or magnetic flux passing through this closed surface, then the magnetic flux density B will be d phi by ds, and you have to consider the unit vector of the surface. Unit vector of the surface, obviously, that is the normal to this surface or normal to this loop. This is the normal to the surface. So flux density means it is the magnetic flux per unit area, and the direction of the corresponding magnetic flux density, that will be the normal to the corresponding surface or corresponding loop. Now we have to consider the unit of this magnetic flux. What will be the unit of this magnetic flux? I think you are familiar about that. That is Tesla. Tesla means that is basically Newton ampere meter, Newton per ampere meter, or that is also known as Weber per meter square. One by one we will discuss it. Though this particular equation we are still not discussed in this electromagnetic theory class. That is basically the force due to magnetic field. What will be the force due to the magnetic field? F equal to Q into V cross B. Q is the charge. This particular charge will experience, if you put a particular charge under a magnetic field of B, it will experience a magnetic force Fm. That Fm equal to Q into V cross B, where V is the velocity of the charge and B is the magnetic field under which you have placed the charge. So basically force equal to Q into V cross B. Now what is the unit of force? Unit of force is, what is the unit of force? Tell me.
Newton.
Newton. What will be the unit of charge? That is ampere into
Coulomb.
second.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it is written in terms of ampere per second because we know. Next, the velocity of the charge, meter per second. What is the unit of B? We are considering that unit of B is Tesla. That is T. Now this second is cancelled. So what will be the Tesla? Tesla will be equal to Newton divided by ampere into meter. So the unit of the magnetic flux density is basically Tesla. Tesla is nothing but the Newton per ampere meter. Next, second case, that is the magnetic flux density. Magnetic flux phi m equal to, this relation will be also discussed later. Phi m equal to integration of, already we have mentioned it during the discussion of magnetic flux. Magnetic flux equal to surface integral of flux density B dot ds. Now what is the unit of phi? That is the magnetic flux unit. Magnetic flux unit is Weber, and unit of B is Tesla. Unit of area is meter square. So what will be the Tesla? Tesla will be equal to Weber per meter square. Now another thing is also important to know, that is the what is the CGS unit of this magnetic flux density. Tesla is the SI unit of magnetic flux density, and the CGS unit of this magnetic flux density is Gauss's. And the relation between Gauss and Tesla is 1 Gauss equal to 10 to the power minus 4 Tesla. You should remember that the CGS unit of magnetic flux density is Gauss's, and SI unit of the magnetic flux density is Tesla. The relation between these two is 1 Gauss equal to 10 to the power minus 4 Tesla. Now there are different times we are basically confused about two parameters. One is B, another is H. H is basically representing the magnetic field strength or magnetic field intensity, or it is also known as magnetizing field, not magnetic field. H is not magnetic field, rather it is magnetizing field. So magnetic field intensity means that is the magnetomotive force, MMF, magnetomotive force per unit length. So magnetic field intensity means that is the magnetomotive force per unit length. When we discuss about the electric current, we have to concentrate about the EMF. In electrostatic, we have considered this particular parameter, that is EMF, electromotive force. When you deal with the electric circuit, electric current, basically the electric current occurs due to this electromagnetic force. Now in the magnetic field, this magnetic flux, basically the magnetic flux or magnetic line of force, they occurs due to the magnetomotive force. So magnetic field strength or magnetic field intensity H is basically the magnetomotive force per unit length. If we discuss more detail about this magnetomotive force or its and as well as its unit, if we consider a magnetic bar and if we consider a wire that is put on this particular magnet, there are total n number of lines, then magnetomotive force is basically N into I. It is basically the product of the number of turns and the current flowing through the wire. So this magnetomotive force is basically caused due to the current flowing through a single turn or many turns of the conducting wire. If we consider a conducting bar, and if we consider the conducting wire wound on this particular bar and current is flowing through this conducting wire, then this due to the flow of current, magnetomotive force will create. This is the MMA that will generate. What will be the relation between this current and magnetomotive force? That will be equal to the number of turns into the amount of current flowing through the turn. So magnetomotive force equal to number of lines into the turn, into the amount of current flowing through the wire. So it is basically the product of N and I. So what will be its unit? Obviously its unit will be I. Unit of I is current is ampere, and unit of turn is turn. We can define it as by turn. So the unit of MMF, magnetomotive force, it will be ampere turns. Ampere into turns. Now if we consider single turn wire, that is N equal to 1, then MMF will be, unit of MMF will be only ampere. So in general, if you have to say that what is the unit of magnetomotive force, your answer will be ampere into turns, not ampere. You will not confuse with that. The unit of current is ampere, unit of MMF is ampere into turns. If number of turns is 1, then MMF becomes ampere only. So the magnetic field strength, that is mmf per length, mmf per length. So what will be its unit? mmf means that is the product of N into I. I is ampere, N is number of turns or turns, and length in meter. So the unit of magnetic field strength H, that will be ampere turned by meter. Next, we are going to discuss about the relation between the magnetic flux density and magnetic field intensity. Magnetic flux density, that is B, and magnetic field intensity, that is H. Magnetic field intensity, also known as magnetic field strength, and this magnetic flux density, it is also known as magnetic induction, and it is also called only the magnetic field. B is called the magnetic field. So this heading can be also that the relation between magnetic field and magnetic field intensity. Okay. So this magnetic flux density B, it is, as you know, that is directly proportional to the magnetic field intensity. The magnetic flux density B, or the magnetic field, is directly proportional to the magnetic field intensity H. That is B equal to mu H. While mu is the proportionality constant, it is known as the permittivity of the medium. Now this mu equal to mu 0 into mu r. Mu 0 into mu r. Mu 0 is the permeability of the free space, and mu r is the relative permeability of the corresponding material. In air, for the air, mu r is actually 1, and what is the value of mu 0? That is 4 pi into 10 to the power minus 7. So B0 is basically mu 0 into H, and B equal to mu 0 into mu r into H. So whatever the direction of this magnetic field or magnetic field intensity, magnetic field or magnetic flux density B, its direction should be in the direction of magnetic field intensity. That is the direction of B and H. It is better to say in terms of B and H. One is magnetic flux density, another is magnetic field intensity. They should be in the same direction. Now this permeability, mu, how we can define this permeability? This is basically the ability of the material to conduct magnetic lines of force through it. It's basically representing the ability of the material to conduct magnetic lines of force through it, where this mu equal to mu 0 into mu r. This mu 0 is known as the permeability of air or vacuum. So this mu 0 equal to 4 pi into 10 to the power 7 Henry per meter, and this mu r is the relative permeability of the material. So these are the basic discussion related with the magnetostatic. Now with this basic idea, now we are moving to the Biot-Savart's law. One minute. I think you are familiar about this particular law also, this Biot-Savart's law. Now, if we consider a current carrying conductor, like this, and the current through this particular wire is I. Now, if you want to find out the magnetic field intensity at a point P, then we have to consider, first we have to consider the position vector of this particular point P, and instead of calculating the magnetic field strength due to the entire wire, first we have to consider the elementary or differential length dl. For this differential length dl, we will calculate the magnetic field strength. After that, if you integrate the corresponding field strength, we will get the total field strength, magnetic field strength due to this current carrying conductor. So first we have to know the position vector of the corresponding point where you have to find out the magnetic field strength. Then we have to consider an elementary or differential length on the conducting wire. For this differential length, we will calculate the magnetic field strength. Now, to calculate that magnetic field strength, we need to know the angle between this position vector and the unit vector to this particular differential surface or differential length. What will be the unit vector to this differential length? That is basically the normal to this surface. And we are considering that angle between this position vector and the normal to this differential length is alpha. Then first of all, that dH, that is the differential magnetic field strength or magnetic field intensity, it will be directly proportional to the IDL, I into DL. That is the differential current component, I into DL. It will be directly proportional to the sine of the angle between the position vector and the unit vector to this differential length. And it will be inversely proportional to the square of the distance between this differential length and the position vector and the corresponding position P. So that is the basic of Biot-Savart's law. The amount of or differential magnetic field strength, it will be directly proportional to the IDL, it will be directly proportional to the sine of alpha, and it will be inversely proportional to the R square. That is mentioned in this particular statement. So it states that differential magnetic field DH or differential magnetic field intensity DH to an arbitrary point P it will be proportional to the differential current element I into DL, and sine of the angle between the element and the position vector R, and then it is inversely proportional to the square of distance between P and the element. So that is the statement of Biot-Savart's law. If we consider a current carrying conductor that carrying current I, now if we want to find out the magnetic field intensity or field strength at a point P, then you have to apply the Biot-Savart's law. Now, as per the Biot-Savart's law, the magnetic field strength or field intensity at this particular point P, it will be directly proportional to this product of current component, differential current component IDL. It will be proportional to the sine of alpha and inversely proportional to the R square. Now, this proportionality constant, it is sometimes represented by K also. That is, it is written as 1 by 4 pi. This is the proportionality constant. This is IDL into sine alpha by R square. Now, if you want to represent it in terms of vector, so on the left hand side, we have included the vector sign. So on the right hand side, basically it is DL. DL is the element of the differential element in the corresponding conducting wire, and this sine alpha. So it is basically the DL cross R. It is IDL of sine alpha. So it is nothing but the IDL cross the R vector, where R is the unit vector. This is the basically the sorry, this is not unit vector. This is the unit vector along this particular direction. This is the unit vector r cap, ideal cross r. Now we know the relation between the, how we can rewrite this unit vector r cap equal to vector r divided by r. So r square becomes r cube. Clear? So the elementary or the differential magnetic field intensity dH equal to 1 by 4 pi I dl cross r divided by r cube. This is the differential field strength. So to calculate the total magnetic field, what will be the total magnetic field? Rather than it is called total magnetic field intensity or strength, it will be intensity, magnetic field intensity, because we are talking about the H. It is intensity, magnetic field intensity. H equal to, that is integration of dH, that is 1 by 4 pi dl cross r by r cube. Now we can easily calculate the, you can easily find out the unit of this H from this equation also. I ampere, dl in meter, r in meter, r cube in meter cube. So meter, only 1 meter will be there. So the unit will be ampere per meter. Is there any doubt?
No, sir.
No. Then next, in the next step, we have to find out the, what should be the direction of this magnetic field. So using this Weierstrabert's law, we have find out the magnetic field intensity at an arbitrary point P. Okay. Using this particular law, we can easily find out the magnetic field strength or magnetic field intensity at any arbitrary point P. But the question is, what should be the direction of this magnetic field intensity? What should be the direction of this magnetic field intensity? That we can find out by using the right hand thumb rule. Now, as per the right hand thumb rule, so we will apply the right hand thumb rule to find out the direction of magnetic field intensity. What should be the direction of H due to the magnetic field or due to the current carrying conductor. So suppose in that case, this is the conducting wire. This middle one is the conducting wire. It is carrying a current I along this upward direction. Now you have to put your right hand. Your thumb will be directed towards the direction of current. Now if you close your fingers, that will give you the direction of magnetic field. Now if you close your fingers of the right hand, then that will give you the direction of magnetic field intensity. Okay, that is the basic of thumb rule. So to find out the direction of induced magnetic field intensity due to current carrying through a particular conductor, we have to apply the right hand thumb rule. As per the right hand thumb rule, you have to put our right hand extending the thumbs towards the direction of current flow. Then if we close our fingers, the direction of movement of fingers, that will give us the direction of magnetic field intensity. Now say if the direction of current flow is in the opposite direction, then what will be the direction of magnetic field intensity? Once again, you have to apply your so it will be
Clockwise.
that will be the direction of current. Magnetic field intensity. So this right hand thumb rule is apart from this right hand thumb rule, you can also apply the screw rule, right hand screw rule. that is, if you use a right-handed screw and the point of the top of the screw is towards the direction of current, then you have to move the screw in that direction. That will represent the direction of magnetic field intensity. So either by using the right hand thumb rule or right hand screw rule, you can easily find out the direction of induced magnetic field intensity. Now consider this particular example. So in that particular example, we have considered that the current is just per the right hand. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we are considering 2 points P and Q surrounding this particular current carrying conductor. Now, as per the right hand thumb rule, now if we want to find out the direction of magnetic field intensity, that will be like that. So it will form a closed loop. It will form a closed loop. That is another important features of the magnetic field lines. It always creates a closed loop. So at this particular point P, outward to the page, that is outward from the page, and at point P it is inside to the page. So normally if it is outward from the page, the magnetic field is denoted by this particular symbol. So at this point, if you want to denote the direction of magnetic field intensity, then you have to put this particular symbol. That means it is outward from the page, and this is the symbol is used to represent the magnetic field is into the page. So at this point, you can use this particular symbol. From this symbol, others can understand that in this at this particular point, the magnetic field is into the page. Okay. So from the basic of Biot-Savart's law, we have discussed about what should be the direction of magnetic field intensity and how we can represent them with the corresponding symbol. Next, we are moving to the Ampere circuit law for the magnetic field intensity. Ampere circuit law for magnetic field intensity. Now, this particular law states that the line integral of magnetic field intensity, that is H dot dl, line integral of magnetic field intensity H dot dl around a closed loop. You have to always consider a closed loop, not open loop or open circuit. You have to consider a closed loop. That will be equal to the total current enclosed by the closed loop. I is the total current that is enclosed in the closed loop. So as per the Ampere's law, if we consider or if we find out the line integral of magnetic field intensity around a closed loop or closed surface, it will be equal to the total current enclosed by the closed loop. So as per the equations, line integral of H dot dl, that is equal to I, where I is the magnetic field intensity, dl is corresponding differential length of the closed loop, and I is the total current enclosed in the closed loop. Clear? So Ampere's law states that the line integral of magnetic field intensity around the closed loop, that will be equal to the total current enclosed by the closed loop. It will be more clear when we consider this example. Okay. So next we are considering that this is a current carrying conductor. This is the direction of current flow. Direction of current flow, and the total current is I. And we are considering a closed loop surrounding this particular current carrying conductor. So as per the right hand rule, obviously that will be the direction of magnetic field intensity. So over this closed loop, what will be the total if we apply the line integral? If we apply the integral, that is H dot dl, that will be equal to the total current enclosed by this loop. Next, if we consider some different scenario, suppose in place of single conducting wire, there are 4 conducting wires, and the corresponding current directions of the current are given. I1 is upward direction, I2 is downward direction, I3 is upward direction, I4 is also in the upward directions. Now, surrounding all these conductors, we are considering a closed loop, and we are considering that the direction of magnetic field intensity is anti-clockwise. Then the question is, what should be the total, or if you apply the Ampere circuit law for this particular scenario, what will be the line integral of magnetic field intensity? Can you tell me what will be the line integral of this magnetic field intensity?
So is it the summation of all currents? Means I1 plus I3 plus I4 minus I2.
Yes, it will be the summation of all currents enclosing into this particular closed loop. As I2 is in the opposite direction, so it will be minus only. So the line integral of the magnetic field intensity, that is H dot dl, that will be equal to I1 plus I3 plus I4. Only I2 will be minus, because I2 is in the opposite direction in comparison to the I1, I3 and I4. So in that way, by applying the Ampere's circuit law, we can find out the line integral of the magnetic field intensity, and it will be equal to the total current enclosed by the closed loop. Now, instead of a single thin wire, if we consider this type of current carrying conductor with radius of rho, this is a current carrying conductor, that is a cylindrical current carrying conductor. Cylindrical current carrying conductor. Okay, with a radius of rho. Now you have to consider different situations. If the corresponding test point is outside the conducting wire, then what will be the line integral of the magnetic field intensity? And we are considering the current is flowing in the upward directions. So first we are considering that the test point P is outside the cylindrical conductor, and the distance from the center of this conductor is R. That means R is greater than rho. This is the situation, that is outside the wire, R is greater than rho. So it will be H dot dl as per the Ampere circuit law. It will be H dot dl equal to I. Now, what will be the dl? That is the total area. Total area plus considering this point, that is nothing but the 2 pi r. So it will be H into 2 pi r equal to I. Now if you want to write down it in terms of vector, so what will be H? H equal to I by 2 pi r. Why we are considering it A phi? Because it is the conductor is in cylindrical shape. That means we have to consider the rho phi z. It is a cylindrical coordinate system. Radius is rho, phi is angle, and z is along the z direction. This is rho, this is along the z direction. And what about the phi? What is the direction of magnetic field? The direction of magnetic field will be like that,
Anti-clockwise.
anti-clockwise. So what will be the unit vector along this magnetic field? That will be in the direction of phi. Okay, if you go through the cylindrical coordinate system, the direction of magnetic field, the unit vector will be phi. That's why it is represented by phi. Next, we will consider the another situations, that is r equal to rho. That means now the test point is at this point. This is the second test point, where now that means now this is your r. So in that case, r equal to rho, r equal to rho. So what will be h dot dl? H dot dl equal to I as per the Ampere's law. Now integration of dl means that is nothing but the 2 pi rho, because r equal to rho. So it becomes h equal to I by 2 pi rho, I by 2 pi rho into the corresponding unit vector phi. So if you consider the first equation, you see H, that is the magnetic field intensity, is inversely proportional to R. In that equation, H is independent of R, or you can say if the conductor, the dimension of the conductor is known, the H is constant if the test point is on the surface of the conducting wire. Now consider the second situations, that is if the corresponding test point is within the conducting wire. Now that is your R. That means your R is now, in third case, R is less than rho. So what will be the H dot dl? So obviously the H dot dl not will be equal to the I, rather it will be something different. So it is represented by I dash, because R is less than, in case 3, R is less than rho, that is the R is less than the actual dimension of the conducting wire. So R is less than rho. So H dot dl will not be equal to the I, rather it will be equal to I dash. That means I dash is not equal to I. And the question is how we can find out this I dash. That to find out this I dash, okay, next come to this second line, this line. So H, now dl, integration of dl is nothing but the 2 pi r. This 2 pi r, because the radius of the corresponding test point is r. Now this I dash and I, that is related by this particular I dash equal to, we can write down that I dash equal to I into the ratio of two surface area. One is pi r square. You see, we are basically considering two concentric cylinder. Two concentric cylinder, say its radius is actual conducting wire, it is rho. Now as the test point is within the actual conducting wire, that means we are considering another cylindrical wire which is concentric and its radius is r. So I dash will be equal to I into pi r square by pi rho square. Pi r square by pi rho square. Now if you simplify it, it becomes H equal to R 1 by 2 pi r sigma rho square, 2 pi rho square into phi is the unit vector. So in case 3, we have seen that if the test point is within the conducting wire, then H is directly proportional to R. H is directly proportional to R. Okay, so let's summarize it with the plot. So if along y-axis, if we plot the magnetic field intensity or magnetic field strength H with respect to the radius of the conducting wire, or the radius of the test point, that is R. When this rho equal to at this point we are considering R equal to rho. That means if the test point is in left hand side of this row, that means this is basically the case of inside the wire. Inside the wire means that is case 3. In case 3, as per this equation, it is directly proportional to R. So H is directly proportional to the R up to R equal to rho. H is proportional to R. Now when the test point is on the outer surface of the conducting wire, this is the case 2. This is the case 2, where H is independent of R, or it is constant, that is 1 by 2 pi rho. So at this point H is constant. When R equal to rho, H is constant, that is equal to 1 by 2 pi rho. Now on the right hand side of this, for R equal to rho, that is basically the outside the conducting wire. Outside the conducting wire we have discussed under the case 1, where we have seen that H is proportional to 1 by R. So inversely proportional to R. So in that case, it will decrease. H is proportional to 1 by R. Is it clear? So from the basic discussion of
Yes.
Ampere's law, we can consider this case study also to find out the relation between the magnetic field strength with respect to the test point. So in connection with the Maxwell's third equation, in connection with this Ampere circuit law, now we can move to the Maxwell's third equations. Now, as per the Ampere's circuit law, we know that we have just learned that H dot dl, that is the line integral of magnetic field intensity, that is equal to the total current enclosed by the corresponding closed loop. H dot dl equal to line integral of H dot dl equal to I. Now, when we only consider the static field, then we can consider only the total current is basically nothing but the conduction current. But if we consider the time varying field, then we have to consider this parameter also, ID, that is the differential current. So this total current I will be replaced by IC plus ID. Though finally we will not consider the effect of this time varying field. The modification in the Maxwell's equation due to the time varying field, that will be discussed in the next class. Till now we are only dealing with the static field, whether it is electric field or magnetic field, all are static field. Till now we did not discuss about the time varying fields. Okay, so in the next class we will discuss about the effect of time varying field and what will be the corresponding modifications in the Maxwell's equation, that will be discussed. But for the time being, until now we have only concentrated on the static field, whether it is electric or magnetic. Though it is mentioned in this particular discussion that if we consider the effect of time varying current, time varying field, then we have to include this differential term, that is differential current. Now, relation between the current and current density, I is nothing but the integration of J dot ds. That is, you can write down in that way. I in terms of, in place of J, we can say consider JC and JD. One is due to the conduction current, another is due to the differential current. Basically, we will consider these two equations. This H dot dl equal to I and I equal to J dot ds. Using this A and B, we will correlate these two equations to find out the Maxwell's equations. And the effect of this differential current, that will be discussed in the next class, not on the today's class, because for the timing we are only concentrated on the static field. So if we consider these two equations, equation A and B, from equation A and B, we can write down that integration of line integral of H dot dl equal to J dot ds, because H dot dl equal to I as per the Ampere circuit law, and we know I equal to the surface integration of the current density, that is I equal to J dot ds. Basically both are equal to I, so it is H dot dl and J dot ds. Now this particular equation, that means basically directly from the Ampere circuit law, if you correlate the Ampere circuit law with the basic of current, basic equation of the current, that is I equal to J dot ds, that will give you the integral form of Maxwell's equations. That will give you the integral form of Maxwell's equations. Now, like the other two Maxwell's equations, once we derive the Maxwell's equations in integral form, then we have find out the differential form also. Now, from this integral form of Maxwell's equations, to find out its differential form, what we have to do? This is a line integral, and on the right hand side, this is a surface integral. So basically, you have to apply the Stokes theorem, because the Stokes theorem is providing the relation or the conversion between the line integral to surface integral. Because on the left hand side there is a line integral, on the right hand side there is a surface integral. So you have to define, or you have to decide that which particular theorem you will consider, whether it is Stokes theorem or Gauss divergence theorem. Now on the left hand side it is a line integral, on the right hand side it is surface integral. So Stokes theorem gives us the relation between the line integral, or provide us the way how we can convert the line integral into surface integral. So we'll consider the, or we'll go with the Stokes theorem. So as per the Stokes theorem, line integral of a vector equal to curl of the corresponding vector into the surface ds, that is the surface integral curl of the A. So applying this Stokes theorem in equation 1, if you apply this Stokes theorem in equation 1, so it becomes, in place of A, it's basically H, so it becomes curl H dot ds, left hand side surface integral converted. This left hand side, on the left hand side there is a line integral. Once we apply the Stokes theorem, the left hand side of equation 1 is converted into surface integral. Curl H equal to curl H dot ds, integration of curl H dot ds. On the right hand side is remains same, J dot ds. Now on the both side it is, now on the both side it is surface integral, so it becomes curl H equal to J. This is the differential form of the Maxwell's equation, Maxwell's third equation. This is the point form. It is also called point form or the differential form. So equation 2 is representing the differential form of Maxwell's equation. Now, is there any doubt?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, before moving to the Maxwell's fourth equation on the last equation, we'll once again consider some case study on the magnetic flux. We are already familiar with this particular definition of the magnetic flux. Magnetic flux, how we can find out this magnetic flux, phi m, that is the surface integral of the magnetic flux density, that is B dot ds, integration of B dot ds. That is the basic equation how we can find out the magnetic flux from the magnetic flux density. So consider this case first. So this is the red line is representing the magnetic field lines. That is the magnetic field strength B, magnetic field intensity, magnetic flux density B. Now in this particular uniform magnetic field, we are placing a surface we are placing a surface of area A. So under the uniform magnetic field, we are placing a surface, and this surface is perpendicular to the magnetic fields. So if you consider the unit vector to this surface, that will be the unit vector to the corresponding surface, that is A. So what is the angle between B and A? Angle between B and A? 0. Okay. So what will be the corresponding magnetic flux? Phi equal to BA. Basically, it is cos of theta, where theta is the angle between the magnetic field and the unit vector of the surface. Now, in that case, in this particular example, theta equal to 0, theta equal to 0. So, the induced magnetic flux will be maximum. As per this equation, it is integration of B dot ds. Integration of ds means that is the total area of the surface. So it is B into A. So if you place a surface which is perpendicular to the magnetic field, then the magnetic flux, amount of magnetic flux will be maximum. Because we know that cos 0 or cos theta equal to 1, that is the maximum. For theta equal to 0, cos theta is maximum. So this is the situation. Under this particular situation, we can realize maximum magnetic flux. That's why we are discussing this particular point. That is, in which way, if we place a surface under the magnetic field, then the magnetic flux will be maximum. The answer will be that you have to place the surface that is perpendicular to the uniform magnetic field. Then only the magnetic flux will be maximum, and that is equal to B into A, because cos theta equal to 0. Now in that case, once again we are considering the uniform magnetic field that is along x-axis. But now in that case, the surface is placed with some inclination. We are considering some inclined surface. The total area is same like the previous example. So the surface is inclined to the magnetic field. Now first of all, you have to consider the unit vector to this surface. The unit vector to this surface is this A vector, say it is A vector. And the angle between the magnetic field and A is theta. So what will be the magnetic flux? That is BA into cos theta, or basically the B dot of A. Next, if we consider this type of magnetic field distribution and this type of curved surface, then how we can find out the magnetic flux? So the procedure is same. Under the magnetic field, we are considering some curved surface. As the surface is curved, so instead of considering the entire surface, now we have to consider a differential surface ds. Differential surface ds. Then how we can find out the magnetic flux? So that will be the integration of B dot ds. So magnetic flux through a surface. So from this discussion, it is find out that the magnetic flux through a surface, if we place a surface under the magnetic field, then the magnetic flux will be equal to the integration of B dot ds. Surface integration of magnetic flux density. Simply the magnetic flux will be equal to the surface integration of the magnetic flux density. Now depending on the placement of the surface, to realize the maximum magnetic flux, you have to place the surface perpendicular to the magnetic field. This is the case where you will realize the maximum magnetic flux. In that case, theta is more than 0. Theta is more than 0. So the induced magnetic flux phi m will be less than this particular situation. Now if you place this surface which is parallel to the magnetic field, then what will happen? If you place this surface which is parallel to the magnetic field, then what will be the magnetic flux? Tell me.
BA.
How?
So because the angle is 0.
Angle is 0 or 90 degree. We are considering the unit
sir, it's-
vector to the surface, not the angle.
Yes, sir,
between
yes, sir.
the
It's 90
magnetic
then 0.
surface. Correct. Now we have to consider the unit vector along this direction. This is the unit vector to this particular surface A. A and B is perpendicular. Theta is 90 degree. Theta is 90 degree means 0. So if you place a surface which is parallel to the magnetic field, the magnetic flux will be 0. That's why I am discussing these different situations. So to realize the maximum magnetic flux, you have to place the surface perpendicularly. If you place it in parallel with the magnetic field, the amount of flux will be 0. So with this basic idea on the magnetic flux, now we are moving to the Gauss's law for magnetic field. We are already familiar with the Gauss's law for electric field. From the Gauss's law of magnetic field, electric field, we have derived the first equation of the Maxwell's equations. Now we are considering the Gauss's law for magnetic field. It states that the total flux through a closed surface, that means if you consider a closed surface, then the total flux in a magnetic field must be 0. If you consider a closed surface, then you calculate the magnetic flux, then this total magnetic flux will be 0. B dot ds equal to 0. It will be clear if we consider and that thing we know, that is the magnetic field always stays in a closed loop. That is, if we draw the magnetic field lines or line of force, that will be always a closed loop, that will always form a closed loop. So as per the Gauss's law of magnetic field, the total flux through a closed surface, if we consider a total this type of closed surface, then the flux through this closed surface must be 0. That means if you place a closed surface in a magnetic field, then the flux through this closed surface, that will be 0. As you know, the magnetic line of force always form a closed loop. So if we consider a magnetic bar, and if you draw the line of force, it starts from north and end at the south pole. Similarly, in that case also, it starts from the north and end at the south pole. This is basically these two drawing we have considered depending on this particular statement, that is magnetic field always stays in closed loop. Now once again, if we consider a current carrying conductor that is carrying current in this upward direction, then applying the right hand rule and Biot-Savart law, you can say that the magnetic field will induced, and what will be the direction of this induced magnetic field intensity? H. As per the right hand thumb rule, it will be anti-clockwise. This is at certain distance of say R. Now if you move more away from the current carrying conductor, the logic is remains same. You will also find out the magnetic field lines, and this magnetic field intensity H, it will form a closed loop. It will form a closed loop. Now come to the Gauss's law. That means if we place a closed surface in a magnetic field, so by this magnet we have produced some magnetic field intensity. By this current carrying conductor, we have considered some magnetic field. So once you place some magnetic bar, surrounding this magnetic bar, there are some magnetic fields. Similarly, if you consider a current carrying conductor, surrounding this current carrying conductor, there will be some magnetic field, and they will form the closed loop. Now, to verify this Gauss's law, we are placing for this particular situation, now we are placing a closed surface into this magnetic field. We are placing a closed surface into this magnetic field. Then you see what will be the magnetic flux through this closed surface. That has been described by this particular law. If we place a closed surface in a magnetic field, as per this law, the total flux through the corresponding closed surface will be 0. Why it will be 0? From this diagram itself it is clear. You see, this is the magnetic field lines entering into the closed surface, and this is the point where the corresponding field line is moving outwards from the surface. So at this point it is entering, at this point it is leaving the surface. So what will be the total flux? Total flux will be 0. Is it clear? It is.
Yes, sir.
It becomes 0 only for this particular point, as the magnetic field lines are forming the closed loop. Otherwise, this Gauss's law will not be true. As the magnetic field lines are forming a closed loop, now we are placing some surface, closed surface. Obviously, it is a closed surface in the magnetic field. Then we have to consider the amount of magnetic field entering into the closed surface, amount of magnetic field leaving the closed surface. They will be equal. One is entering, one is leaving. So if you sum it, the total magnetic flux will be 0. That is the statement of Gauss's law for magnetic field. Okay. So if we place a closed surface in a magnetic field, the total flux through the closed surface will be 0. Now it is clearly mentioned in this particular diagram also. So if we consider, say, this is a closed surface. This circle is representing a closed surface. Okay. This surface is representing a closed surface, and these are the magnetic field lines that are passing through this closed surface. So over this particular surface, over the left hand surface of this closed, over the left hand of this closed surface, the flux are entering, so it is negative. Now on the left hand side of this closed surface, if we consider this particular area or this particular length over this closed surface, the fields are leaving the closed surface. Fields are leaving the closed surface. That means flux are leaving. So it is positive. So similarly, in that case, you can also consider, if you consider this particular surface or this particular point, field are entering. If you consider this particular surface, field are leaving. So what will be the overall flux in this particular closed surface? So the total flux will be flux entering into the closed surface, flux leaving the closed surface, that will be equal to 0. That is the statement of Gauss's law in magnetic field. So with this basic idea on the Gauss's law for magnetic field, now we are going to discuss about the Maxwell's fourth equations. So as per the statement of Gauss's law, if we consider an enclosed surface, this is the enclosed surface, and if we consider the magnetic flux through this closed surface, so over this surface of the closed surface, over this particular surface of the closed surface, the magnetic fields are entering, and over this particular surface of the closed surface, the fields are leaving the closed surface. So what will be the total flux? Total flux into this particular closed surface, that will be B dot ds equal to 0. This is the as per the Gauss's law for magnetic field that we have discussed right now. So as per the Gauss's law for magnetic field, total flux through a closed surface, that must be 0. So this particular Gauss's law of magnetic field is basically the integral form of Maxwell's fourth equations. So directly you can say this Gauss's law on magnetic field is basically known as the Maxwell's fourth equations in integral form. Now we can easily convert, or we can easily find out the differential form or the point form of these Maxwell's fourth equations. On the left hand side, it is a surface integral, so we have to apply the divergence theorem, because now we have to convert from surface to volume integral. So if we apply the Gauss divergence theorem, A dot ds, integration of A dot ds equal to divergence of A dv. So using this divergence theorem, if we apply this divergence theorem to equation number 1a, equation A, so it will be basically the divergence of B equal to 0. B dot ds equal to divergence of B dv equal to 0. Divergence of B dv equal to 0 means divergence of B equal to 0. So this equation B, this is known as the Maxwell's fourth equation in point form or differential form. Is it clear how we are moving from Gauss's law to the Maxwell's equations? And before
Yes.
that, we have started with the Ampere's law, then we have entered into the Maxwell's third equation. That is very important. You have to first start with the Gauss's law, then you enter into the fourth equation. You start with the Ampere circuit law, then you enter into the Maxwell's third equations. That continuity is very important. So what is the significance of this Maxwell's fourth equations? Divergence of B equal to 0. Or if you consider this integral form, that is the total magnetic flux through an enclosed surface, that must be 0. That means the significance of this Maxwell's fourth equation, that it says that non-existence of magnetic monopole. Non-existence of magnetic monopole means we know that always the magnets comes with north and south pole. Single north pole or single south pole can't exist. Always any magnetic bar means there must be a north pole and south pole. Single north pole and south pole cannot exist. That is the that comes from this basically Maxwell's fourth equation, non-existence of magnetic monopole. It will be more clear. Suppose we are forcefully considering that there is a magnetic monopole, that is the north pole N is located at this point, and enclosing this particular north pole, or that is the monopole means single pole. Okay, monopole means basically the single pole. Now encircling this monopole or north pole, single north pole, we are considering a closed surface by this red line. Now you draw the magnetic field intensity or magnetic field lines. they are basically leaving from this north pole. So we can draw in all directions equally. So we can draw the magnetic field lines in that way. So for this enclosed surface, what will be the surface integral or line integral of B dot ds? That will be 0. That will be 0. From that point, you can say a single north pole or single south pole can't exist, or monopole cannot exist. Magnetic monopole cannot exist. It will be more clear if we consider this particular point. If we consider this magnetic bar with north pole and south pole, and we draw the surface lines, field lines like that. Now, in this particular surface, field leaving, and in this particular surface, field is entering. So overall phi b, what will be the overall phi b? That is 0. So first we considering this particular magnet. Encircling this magnet, we are considering a closed surface. Now for this closed surface, we have to calculate the total magnetic flux. So at this particular point, field is leaving. At this particular surface, field is entering. So overall, that means at this particular edge, field are leaving the closed surface. At this particular edge, field are entering into the closed surface. So overall flux means field flux entering and flux leaving the surface, closed surface. So it will be 0. So that is the discussion on Maxwell's fourth equations. Maxwell's fourth equations tells us that magnetic monopole cannot exist. Now, to establish this particular statement, we can consider this diagram itself. That is, if we consider the successive division of bar magnet, we are considering a single bar magnet with north pole and south pole. If you divide it, you know there will be south pole will be created, north pole will be created. So there are two magnets. Once again, if you divide it, there will be north pole, south pole, north pole, south pole, north pole, south pole. But a bar with single north pole or single south pole cannot exist. So once again, if you divide this magnet, this is a small magnet bar, it will also consist of north pole and south pole. This also will consist of north pole and south pole. So this successive division of bar magnet also tells us that a single north pole and south pole cannot exist for the magnetic bar. Okay, that is basically comes from the Maxwell's fourth equations. Magnetic monopole cannot exist. That is the main point. An isolated magnetic charge does not exist. That is the significance of Maxwell's fourth equations. So till now, we have discussed all the Maxwell's equations one by one. Total 4 equations we have discussed. But considering that the electric fields and magnetic fields, they are static in nature. So the Maxwell's 4 equations that we have derived so far, considering the static magnetic field. This is the summary of the Maxwell's equations, considering the static electromagnetic fields that we have derived so far. We have first derived this one, divergence of D equal to rho V, that we derived from the Gauss's law for the electric field. Then we have discussed or derived this particular second equation, called E equal to 0. It basically represents the conservativeness of electrostatic field. This is the differential form or the point form, and this is the integral form. Okay. So this first equation was derived from the Gauss's law for the electric field. Then we have derived this called E equal to 0. that is 1 and 2. How we are defining 1 and 2? These are related with the electric field, E and D. D is the electric field intensity, E is the electric field. So this one is the first we have derived from the Gauss's law. This one was the second we have derived, and it represents basically the conservativeness of electrostatic field. We have discussed in details. Next, we have derived the Maxwell's third equations that basically comes from the Ampere's law that we have discussed just on today's class. That is Curl H equal to J. Curl H equal to J. It comes from the Ampere's law, H dot dl equal to I. Line integral of H dot dl equal to I. It comes from the Ampere's law. So first we discuss about the Ampere's law. Then from the Ampere's law we have derived the Maxwell's third equation, that is Curl H equal to 0. Then finally we have derived this fourth equations, that is divergence of B equal to 0. It basically explains the non-existence of magnetic monopole. So this equation is also derived from the Gauss's law for magnetic field. So equation 1 is derived from the Gauss's law of electric field. Equation 4 is derived from the Gauss's law of magnetic field. Now, so all these four equations so far we have derived or discussed based on the static electromagnetic fields. On the next class, we will discuss what will be the modification in these Maxwell's equations if we consider the time varying electromagnetic field. That will be discussed in the next class. Okay.
Sir, hello.
So I have basically discussed in that way. First, we have started with the static electric field. Considering the static electric field, we first discussed about the Gauss's law. Then we derive this first equation. Then we consider this Curl equal to second equations. Once we enter into the magnetostatic, first we discuss about the Ampere's law. Then from the Ampere's law we derive these third equations. Then we have discussed about the Gauss's law for magnetic field and we derive these fourth equations. Now tell me.
স্যার এই ডেরিভেশন গুলো কি মানে এক্সামে লিখতে দেওয়া হবে না?
হ্যাঁ অবশ্যই।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে।
So that's all on today's class. The Maxwell equation for time varying magnetic field, time varying electromagnetic field, that will be discussed in the next class. Apart from the basically we have to discuss about the Faraday law, boundary conditions for magnetic fields. These things we have to discuss from the magnetostatics, that requires at least one class. Faraday equations, boundary conditions, and the Maxwell's equations for the time varying electromagnetic fields, that will require one class. And for the electromagnetic wave propagation, I need another class or another one or two class. So in total I need minimum 2 classes and maximum 3 classes. So I think within the first week or within the second week of the January, I'll be able to finish my part of the syllabus.
Okay, sir.
So I will share this presentation at the end of this class or at the evening time. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Stop presenting. Abhishek Kumar Mahato.
Present, sir.
Next, Alamgir Shapui.
Present, sir.
Alamgir Shapui.
Present, sir.
Anirban Nashkar. Anirban.
Absent.
Absent. Archana Kumari.
Present, sir.
Okay. Purvavati. Next, Orko.
Present, sir.
Next, Orko Prabhu,
Present, sir.
Ornov,
Present, sir. Present, sir.
okay, Deep Kumar,
Absent.
absent. Gaurango Das, absent. Next, Shahana Rai,
Present, sir.
present.
Present.
Next, Shayan Mondol,
Present, sir.
Shayanudip,
Present, sir.
Next, Sabuni,
Present, sir.
Shashwato,
Present, sir.
Shobhik Chatterjee, absent. Next, Shaurodip,
Present, sir.
সৌরদীপ ক্লাসে ইরেগুলার কেন? একটা প্রেজেন্ট একটা অ্যাবসেন্ট, একদম রেগুলার।
স্যার আগের দিন আমার স্যার মানে স্যার আমি একটা রিলেটিভ হসপিটালে অ্যাডমিট ছিল, তাই আমি থাকতে পারিনি। মানে
তার আগের
সেখানে
সপ্তাহে
গেছি।
প্রেজেন্ট ছিল, তার আগের সপ্তাহে অ্যাবসেন্ট, তার আগের সপ্তাহে প্রেজেন্ট, তার আগের সপ্তাহে অ্যাবসেন্ট, একদম
স্যার, আমি
অল্টারনেট।
তো ছিলাম তার আগের সপ্তাহে।
না, এখানে তো অ্যাটেন্ডেন্স লিস্টটা বলছে না। নেক্সট, স্বস্তিক কুমার ঘোষ,
Present, sir.
স্বস্তিকের পরে তর্পণ বর্মন, অ্যাবসেন্ট। তুহিন,
Present, sir.
রূপকুমার, অ্যাবসেন্ট। ঐন্দ্রিলা চ্যাটার্জি,
Present, sir.
নেক্সট, শুভম কুমার গুপ্তা,
Present, sir.
শ্রীধর সামন্ত,
Present, sir.
শেখ মাসিবুল ইসলাম,
প্রেজেন্ট স্যার।
প্রেজেন্ট।
প্রেজেন্ট স্যার।
আচ্ছা, তো রানু ছেড়ে দিয়েছে। অর্ঘ্য অধিকারী,
Present, sir.
রনিত মিশ্রা, এও কি ছেড়ে দিয়েছে নাকি?
না স্যার, আছে।
একটা মাত্র ক্লাস করেছে এতদিনে, 5 দিনের মধ্যে। উদয় সানিগ্রাহী, অ্যাবসেন্ট। উদয়ন মন্ডল,
ইয়েস স্যার।
রাহুল চট্টোপাধ্যায় নাকি? রাহুল, অ্যাবসেন্ট। মৃণাল রজক, অ্যাবসেন্ট।